Now, in this passage that's in front of us, we find the mechanics of how sin and salvation work through typology or through types. We find types in the Bible which show us something that reveals a truth about something or another or an event. So we see types throughout the scriptures that reveal or teach us more about it. Years ago, I saw a toy car that I thought I would have really wanted this car when I was a kid. It was a truck that was about 1.5 feet long, and it had bolts and screws in them. It was plastic bolts, plastic screws, but it came with a toolkit, and you could take the truck completely apart. You could take the tailgate off, you could take the doors off, you could take the differential out, you could take the transmission out, you could take the motor out, you could take the motor apart. Then it had little instructions on how you could put everything back together again. I would have spent hours taking that truck apart and putting that truck back together again. And that's a type of a real truck, right? You would learn from taking that apart and putting it back together again. Now, it wouldn't have the nuances of a real truck, but you would be able to tell, you'd be able to have that experience, and that's what a type is. Now, before we get into our text, let's take a look at types and how they're used in the Bible. We find many types in Scripture. And by the way, there are types and antitypes. And that's where it gets a little bit confusing. If you made a mask of my face, if you used plaster and you made a mask of my face, then that would be an antitype. My face would be the type, the mask would be the antitype. If I was representing something, then see, I'm the type. I'm the type of what the antitype would be. But there's another way in which it's used. Moses is a type of Jesus, who is the antitype. Moses is the real thing, but Moses is a type of Jesus. Moses said, another prophet's going to arise who is like unto me. And Moses was a deliverer, and Jesus is a deliverer. Our deliverer is coming, we sing, right? The song. Our deliverer is here, and he has delivered me. Moses couldn't help but be a deliverer. Raised in Egypt as the son of the Pharaoh's daughter, having a relationship with his mother, Jochebed, but raised in Egypt, when he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, he went to deliver him and killed the Egyptian. Now he was a murderer. So then he goes into the wilderness for 40 years, running from being a murderer and probably thinking, like you and I would, God won't use me. I murdered that man. God's not going to use me. But when he got out there, remember when he was running from Pharaoh? He got to a well and there were some gals there, and some guys came in with some goats, and they were going to push out the women. And Moses, because he was trained, he was militarily trained, Moses delivered the women from the guys because he couldn't get away from it no matter where he went. When he showed up at the well, he was a deliverer for the women. He ended up marrying one of the daughters of Jethro that was from Medium, that area. And then God called him back to be a deliverer, where he went and delivered the children of Israel out of slavery. He is the type of Jesus delivering us out of slavery. But he couldn't bring us into the promised land. He couldn't bring them into the promised land, so we needed another type who was going to bring us in the promised land. So that's Joshua, who has the same name as Jesus, the same Hebrew name, Joshua. The Lord is salvation. And Joshua brought us into the promised land, just as Moses, who is a type of the law as well. The law can't bring you into the promised land. The law can show you have problems and you need help, but it takes Joshua to take you into the promised land. So these are the kind of types and antitypes that you find throughout the Old Testament. Let me just give you a couple of them. I won't explain them in that much detail, but we have Melchizedek, who is a type of Jesus. We have David, who is a type of Jesus as well. You have Jonah. As Jonah was in the belly of the whale for 3 days and 3 nights, so the Son of Man, Jesus said, will be in the heart of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights. Other types that we have are the Passover. We had the Passover where the death angel passed over, and we're told in Hebrews that Jesus is our Passover. So there's a type and an antitype there. We have the Ark of the Covenant. The law was put into the Ark of the Covenant. The mercy seat was put on top of it. And Jesus has become the one who protects us from the law through the mercy that comes through Christ. Now, we have the whole sacrificial system. That's a type and antitype. Every sacrifice that was made under the law was a type of the sacrifice that Jesus would make on Golgotha when he gave his life to Christ. When he died for us so that we could give our lives to Christ. So the Bible's just full of types. Now, these are ones that, as I was studying, I'm just coming up with on the top of my head. It doesn't take long to do it, because when you get into the scriptures, you find these types of Christ everywhere that you go. And we're going to see that there is a type of Christ in the study that we have today. Now, John 2:19-21 says, Jesus answered and said to them, destroy this temple, and 3 days I will rise it up. But he was speaking of the temple of his body. So again, the temple was a type of Jesus, who was the temple, and now the church, who together, collectively, make up the temple of God. Matthew 12:40 says, and this is one I quoted earlier, for as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. And you could see how much we learn from types in Scripture.